Hey guys, so what I'm going to hope to be doing in this video is going over the two styles of StarCraft that I personally divide the game into. I'll be analyzing a ZVZ I had on Prion and probably a second ZVZ I had on the same map from both perspectives. So for this initial game, I usually take the greed route. I usually try to out macro and have a better economy than my opponent. Most of the time I'm able to spend my money pretty efficiently and get upgrades rather quickly. Engage generally what I'm up against, so it works out for me. I would say I win a majority of the time going for that economical play, but for some reason on this game, this very first game, I just decided to be the aggressor. I identified that it is somewhat of a weak spot for me and that I don't usually play aggressively. So I just wanted to make this point to myself that I could do it. I wanted to see what the playstyle was like, and I wanted to see if it was easier for me because I just haven't really experienced it. So being Prion, gonna always take that hatchery first on the low ground. Gonna get a pool, and I'm sending my overlords over to scout for any early Zergling aggression. I'll be using that first overlord to scout his base. And the second overlord I'll probably leave hanging around the middle of the map, because that's where I would like to see Zerglings coming across. If there is any, Zergling fights tend to snowball incredibly rapidly, so whoever has the most Zerglings generally wins the game in these early fights. I definitely don't want to fall behind in that, but I want to get away with as much droning as I can. I want to be able to make these workers without getting caught with my pants down with a big Zergling rush. Now my second base here, I've started to drone up. I've got 10 drones in that base. I've scouted that he's way ahead of me in drones on his natural. Um, and unfortunately, there's not much I can do about that because of the gas opening I took. I don't have the Zergling production to go run over there and punish him, and I just simply don't have the economy to try and out-economy him here. So my thinking is I'm going to get some roach upgrades, and with these roach upgrades, I'm going to try and punish him at his third base. Um, Normally the way this works is Zergs will stay on 2 base until they have a decent enough force to either start harassing or at least defend their third base when they choose to take it. And my hope is that I'll be able to hit that window where he doesn't have quite enough stuff to defend it, but he still wants to take it, so he'll throw it down. Um, the timing that I'm looking to hit is right as my Roach's attack, defense, and speed upgrades finish. Those 3 upgrades 100% guarantee that I'll win any Roach fight, specifically the armor upgrade and the speed upgrade. With the speed upgrade, my Roaches will be reinforcing faster, but they'll also be able to get the first hit off against his Roaches, especially when I'm chasing. His Roaches won't be able to run away, so any fight that I start to win will snowball a lot heavier. And I've also started Burrow. Now the main reason for Burrow is that Roaches regenerate much faster while burrowed. So if I win a fight, but it's not very convincing, and I need those Roaches for the next fight, I can just burrow them to regenerate their health. And I've taken the second gases and my natural because I'm expecting to be making a swell of Ravagers here, which are gas heavy, as well as spending more money on the upgrades. But it's at this point I've noticed that my double gas opener has actually started to be a negative. I do not have the minerals to make the army that I want. I'm stopping army production purely because of the income. And so I've realized that at this point, if he's taking at third base, not only is he already ahead, but he's going to be even further ahead. This opening could have definitely been done better, but I'm going to try and make it work for me. Now, luckily right there, as Burrow finishes, I burrowed my army for no reason whatsoever. I just burrowed them because. and he runs an entire swarm of Zerglings past, and he doesn't see my burrowed roaches there, simply because I burrowed right as he came into vision. It was pure luck on my part, but that lets me kill all of his roaches, all of his Zerglings, which is about a dozen, maybe a little more Zerglings, and save my third base. And that's very important for me, not because I'm looking to saturate that third base, but because it baits him into thinking that I'm going for an economical game, and it also gives me additional larvae. Now, I'm honestly, at this point, I know how behind I am. I've just scouted his third at the other gold base, and I know that if I don't attack him, if I don't do something to slow his economy down, I'm just simply going to lose the game. So I march my roaches and ravagers over here to his third base, and I catch him off guard. I don't pass any scouting overlords. The overlord I had in the center of the map is really helpful in noticing when his stuff was coming by, but he didn't have any vision of my attack. When I get there, I notice he's got a lot of roaches and hydras. But the thing is, his roaches don't have that defensive upgrade. So I win that fight very convincingly. All the gas he's put into hydras would be well spent if he had more of them. They simply outdamage roaches, but they're just not tanky enough. So with my Ravager composition, I'm able to shell them with Corrosive Biles, and they just all go down. And by the nature of ZVZ here, after taking this fight, I've already basically won the game. I shut down his hatchery on the high ground there. I'm splitting my forces a little, some to catch the reinforcements, others to deal with the hatchery and catch any drones moving across. I leave about 4 or 5 roaches at that base to kill any spawning larvae. And as I'm heading to his ramp, I notice that he's got another hatchery on the low ground. Now, he's been unfortunately caught in a classic case of just trying to be too greedy. He saw that I had a lot of roaches. He saw that I had that third base really slowly, so he was trying to get that massive economical lead. But unfortunately, I just caught him in that window where he didn't have the army to support it. So I walk up the ramp here, deciding to end the game, and that's it. Alright, guys. For this side of things, I'll be going over the greed style of gameplay I was talking about earlier. My usual thought process in ZVZ has always been to play greedy, which is to get that second base, build up just the bare minimal amount of units required to get the third base, and then take that as well. Now, the benefits to taking the earlier third are increased economy, obviously. This lets you get upgrades ahead of your opponent, and if you live long enough to take and saturate the third, you will inevitably overwhelm your opponent, as well as being able to tech to higher tier units. And what this normally means, in ZVZ at least, is Mutalisks. Now, Mutalisks have a lot of power in the ZVZ matchup. What it usually means is you have map control because your Mutalisks can fly around killing Zerglings, Banelings, Roaches, literally anything, because most Zerg units cannot shoot up. And if you have Mutalisks before your opponent and they try teching into Mutalisks, you can always just kill their Mutalisk cloud with your higher Mutalisk count because you'll have started producing them earlier. So I'm actually going to skip ahead here if I can just a couple minutes. And so what's happened is I've sent my overlords across the map. I've scattered his second base. We're around the same timings here. I've kept one overlord outside of his base to check for any aggression. Chased a few Zerglings around the map that he sent to my side of the map. They were simply the 4 startinglings that everyone makes for scouting and defense and aggression. But I've stopped army production there. Now, if you see in the production tab, he started to make roaches. He's doing the strategy I actually employed in my aggressive video, which was a roach ravager, even maybe roach baneling or roach hydralisk time. And this is almost always going to be the case. So after seeing no more Zerglings coming across the map, I've teched into a fast lair, faster than him even, and made a baneling nest with baneling speed. Now I'll have that baneling speed and those banelings, and those will be my only defense here until I can tech into that higher tech like Mutalisks and get this third base. My Overlord's just chilling outside his base. I haven't gone in for much scouting, but I haven't seen any aggression either. So I don't know much here, but I'm going to play it safe. I believe I make a couple banelings at the top of my ramp. The evolution chambers in my base here are basically me saying I'm investing heavier into the late game. And as you can see, I'm teching into +1 upgrades in defense, and I've seen his army moving across the map. So from this point out, I'm making only Zerglings. My third base, which I was going to set up, I haven't planted it yet. I didn't quite have the money, and I just saw him moving out as I set it down. So what I've done is I've made only Zerglings, I've made extra queens, and I've morphed a ton of banelings. Now I'm morphing those 2 spine crawlers, and I'm checking his base with a couple of my Zerglings, and I see that he's only on 2 base, so I know this is a big attack. Here he comes with his roaches. Luckily my baneling count is pretty solid here, so I don't lose too much. Now lings do not trade very effectively against roaches, and I'm not microing my banelings well, so they're not getting good hits. But I have enough queens at the top of this ramp and enough Zerglings coming out to try and contain this. I managed to catch most of it and surround these roaches at my ramp. And my thought process now is to secure that third base. I've taken a lot of damage from this, but he's invested a lot of gas heavily into his attack and all these roaches. My gas has gone right into a spire. You can see I laid that spire down just as he started to attack me. So that's going to be finishing very shortly. And Mutalisks are the ultimate counter to roaches. So I've set my third base down here. I've held his attack. I'm a little behind because of the damage that attack did, but my drone count is enough that my economy's doing well. Now we've just seen in the center of the map he's got another ton of roaches coming my way, and unfortunately I got greedy here. Now this is where a lot of mistakes can be made. I made a lot of drones for my third base. That third base is rather exposed, and it's always going to be a point of contention from this point out. I've stopped the drones from moving back and forth, hoping that he won't notice. Those spines I made earlier are doing a lot of work for me here, and I morph a ton of banelings, but they do not manage to kill the majority of the roaches. So those roaches make their way into my base and start attacking my drones, and I send these drones back to work because, quite frankly, I'm going to need this money. And right now, my Mutalisk pop out. And these Mutalisk are able to clean up all these roaches with absolutely no chance of the roaches fighting back. That's just, roaches don't shoot up, it's that simple. I've got all of my drones to safety at the third base. I've got enough queens to transfuse these mutas if anything were to go wrong. He hasn't made any ravagers. So at this point, I've not only held his roach aggression, but now I have the ultimate counter to his army composition. So I'm sending a lot of my drones back to the main base. I've got a third saturated, a second saturated, a nice cloud of Mutalisks with a decent number of lings, and here's where I can put my map pressure to effect. Now I kill his overlord, the scouting overlord in the center of the map. I'm keeping my macro up at home, and I move over to his third, which will obviously be slower than mine, while also setting these spine crawlers out by my third. So I do get a cancel on this third. And although he's got a pretty high roach count, he can't ever fight these Mutalisks. Unless he sends them across the map and lets them get attacked by my Mutalisks all day, they're literally useless. So I'm just going to use these mutas to slow him down and kill his third, make sure he never gets the economy that I have. And from here on out, all the Mutalisks I pump out are just free lead. Like, there's nothing he can possibly do about it. So you see he's producing Hydralisks, the only Zerg unit that can shoot up besides queens. Now normally Hydralisks are the counter to Mutalisks. Hydralisks just do more damage, they shoot up. And Mutalisks are fairly squishy. So I'm collecting a decent number of mutas in the middle of the map here, and I'm going to keep making sure to stop that third base from going down. And he's going to mass Hydralisks here to try and snipe that cloud of Mutalisks that I have. Now my Mutalisks are more expensive than his Hydralisks, and at the end of the day, the Hydralisks will win a one-on-one fight. So as long as I keep my Mutalisks mobile and do damage with them without dying to his Hydralisks, they'll be safe. And I can try to counter this Hydralisk army of his by getting Banelings. Banelings are the counter to the Hydras. which is why I've never made a Roach Den. I never made any other tech but Banes, Lings, and Mutas. Now, I don't know that he's going Hydras, but it's always the safe assumption that he's going to go Hydras. If you have a ton of Mutas, that is the first reaction. I'm over here sniping that third base, sniping any free Overlords I can find, as well as trying to make sure he's not taking any sneaky bases on the side of the map. Back at home, I've taken my fourth base. I'm miles ahead in economy. He's stuck on these two bases, and I've got an Overlord right in his base. I don't know if he never saw it, but it has perfect vision of his army moving back and forth right here. So I can see when he goes for this third, if his army's in position to snipe my Mutalisks, and it's not. So I'm going to keep moving these Mutalisks in and making sure this third isn't going down. That queen was a little bit of trouble, but I think it was more or less just a spot. And as you can see, my supply is taking a lead here, and I have put a ton of money into Banelings. So the idea here is to do some harass. He's got his Hydras positioned at his second, but not in position to save that queen, so I snipe that. I still have some solid vision here with this Overlord if I choose to move it, but the creep spread shows me that he's taking this bottom base here. Knowing that that's around where his army is, my thought process is I need to move in and kill this base. But doing it down this pathway is far too dangerous, so I'm going to move my units to the left here and then come in from the side. His army is luckily out of position further in the top area. Doesn't catch me. I get a few drone kills, but he moves over. And this is where I've decided I have a huge lead. There's no way this guy is going to catch up to me. If anything, I've hit a power spike right now that I need to utilize. So I start teching to Hive by dropping that infestation pit. This greed has put me in a place where he can't ever attack me. I'll just have more stuff than him. And he has to play massively defensive, so my greed is only going to make me more and more ahead. So knowing that he's got to push for this third base to try and catch up, I send all of my army over and actually catch him before he even gets to the ramp. And Banelings just absolutely melt Hydralisks, and that takes the game for me. The main points of this game were I was greedy in taking my third base at this gold location, but I managed to hold this ramp. Now the Roach timing was good. I made the spine crawlers too late, but they did end up helping out, and I was able to hold the first wave with ease. It was then that I decided to drone up my third. And this is what ZVZ comes down to with greed or aggression. After holding that attack, I could tech up to Mutalisks on two bases. It would have been slower, but it would have been possible. But his decision to attack me again was ill-executed. It was smart in that I was droning incorrectly. Luckily, I still had this scouting overlord out here, and I was able to see the roaches coming. Had I not had that, I would have been in a lot more trouble. But these spine crawlers from before were helpful. The Spire tech, right as his first wave hit, that went down, and it finished just as his second wave hit. If it was me in that position, I would not have sent this second wave up this ramp into the spine crawlers, not knowing what would be coming out, especially if I didn't see a roach warren. If I had seen no roaches, I would immediately assume Mutalisks, but he did not. And he also did not check this area. He ran right up the ramp, thinking I was still on the 2 base, when I had about 8 drones and a hatchery right here that he could have easily sniped instead of sending these roaches up here to die. So properly executed, that may have killed me. But my greed was what allowed me to just absolutely run wild in this game. My army count is massive at this point. My Mutalisks were obviously a huge advantage because I could keep track of this third, this fourth. I had this vision that he couldn't really snipe because you couldn't make Mutalisks unless you walked a queen or some Hydralisks over here. And really, it just comes down to what you feel more comfortable with. We've seen both sides of the coin with roaches doing lots of damage in the mid-game, and the Hydralisks, Mutalisks, and later tech doing lots of damage in the later games. What it really comes down to is this one moment, where he's got his advantage in army, I have my advantage in economy, and he chooses not to go for this base here. He just needed to properly assess the situation, and he may have caught me off guard. That simple wave of drones I made right after he attacked me were probably the difference between winning and losing. And because he didn't kill them, it was winning.